Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Be Neighbors. It's the County Library's program where we talk about subjects that are important to you as a community, and we bring in local experts to come talk about those. And today we have a very special guest. We have Teresa Wilhelmsen, who is the state engineer and the director of Utah Division of Water Rights. And she is here to talk about all things water and how it works in a very complex, interconnected way for our entire state. So we are very excited to have her on today. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here. So I'm happy to talk about my division and my role as state engineer.
Excellent. So yeah, bring up the presentation and we will get started.
Okay, let me share just a couple slides with you. And I'm going to have to get the right, let's see, can you see those slides? Okay. So let me just talk briefly. So I am appointed as the state engineer. I am appointed by Governor Cox, and I am also confirmed by the Utah Senate to serve as state engineer for a 4-year term. I oversee the Office of the State Engineer is housed within the Division of Water Rights, the Utah Division of Water Rights, and essentially the state engineer has been responsible for the general supervision of the waters within the state of Utah, to appropriate, to apportion it, to measure, to distribute those waters of the state. And the first state engineer was appointed in 1897. So we've got a long history of moving water in the state of Utah from point A to point B. If I look at, there we go. Sorry, my slides weren't advancing. So the Office of the State Engineer, like I mentioned, is responsible for the general administrative supervision of the waters. We have 5 statewide programs within the state. We oversee the applications and records, the adjudications, field services, which includes distributing the water in various systems across the state, technical services, which includes studying various basins and getting an understanding of the physical characteristics of surface and groundwater. But the state engineer is also responsible for dam safety and stream alterations. So we do annual inspections of many hundreds of dams across the state as well. And we function out of a main Salt Lake City office, but we also have 7 regional offices across the state, in Logan, Weber, the Utah Lake Jordan River area, Vernal, Price, Richfield, and Cedar City. So we have experts across the state that are distributing the water. So this is just a history slide of water rights in Utah. Pioneers first came in 1847, and in 1897 is when the first state engineer was appointed. That was Willard Young, and he was appointed for just a year before he left the office of the state engineer. In 1903 is when the state first did a comprehensive water law, which required anyone using water within the state of Utah needed to get a water right from the state engineer's office to use that water for beneficial purpose. Then in 1935 is when groundwater also became part of the appropriation and the policy of the state for the state engineer to regulate both surface and groundwater. As you know, I love this slide. It's a picture of a spider that used to live locally, but water is so interconnected and interdependent and complex that as the state engineer, I know that when you pull one strand of that web, it pulls other areas. And that's how the water rights system works as well. So as we distribute water or make decisions on water rights, we have to be aware of that interconnected and interdependent complex systems that we are trying to manage. We look at every diversion of water and every system, and we maintain how much can be diverted, how much water is depleted, and then how much does return to the natural system because we will have water rights that may need to be shepherded or distributed from the top of a basin through a reservoir, and a certain quantity needs to make it, say, for in this example, to the Great Salt Lake. And it's the job of the state engineer to ensure that the wet water is getting where the wet water needs to go based on the water rights system that we have within the state of Utah. As we look at each diversion, we look at that natural flow going into a system, how much is applied, how much is used, how much is returned, and then what is still flowing within that system or evaporated from that system, returns to the system, runoff that will actually satisfy those downstream rights. So every action of the state engineer and every decision that we make is to keep these systems in balance. And so you could say that we really do work in the weeds and make sure that we know where those drops of water are going from point A to B to satisfy whatever rights are needing to be satisfied based on the system, including potentially, like I mentioned, getting water to the Great Salt Lake. So each of these systems, we use schematics or models, distribution accounting models. This is just an example of one of those models where we know what rights are going out, what rights are coming in, what's being stored, what's lost to evaporation, and how much total water that means in a system. So we have various different accounting models that help us manage these systems to distribute water. And we also install measurement devices that support the ongoing data collection of all of the water that's being distributed. This is one of the specific measurement devices that we've installed. This particular one has some telemetry installed, which means that we can get that data in real time. So we know how much on any given day, any given hour, how much water is passing this point. And then we know what rights need to be satisfied and how we need to manage that water to get it to where it needs to be. Plus, it also provides some transparency so that anyone knows how much water is moving where and when that water is moving within a system. This next slide just shows kind of just some basic schematics of the components of a telemetered system. With a control box, a cell modem. But essentially what this telemetry does, like I mentioned, is it sends that signal back to our database so that we can collect that data in real time, which helps us improve the measurement of water within the state of Utah so that we can make better decisions as the water supplies get tighter and tighter. So with that, here's just some contact information and an address for my agency, the Utah Division of Water Rights. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing the slides and happy to address any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Teresa, for that really cool behind the scenes look of how your division manages all of the water and how really complex and interconnected it is. Like, the web was a very inappropriate way of comparing that. Let's see. So we do have some questions from our community, and you kind of answered one of them already. Like, what does the state engineer do? Because engineer is a very encompassing term, but in conjunction with that, part two of that question is, what is a day in your life, your work life like? What do you do in an average day?
You know, my day, a lot of it is spent in meetings, I would say that, with difficult discussions. But part of what I really love about my job is working with local communities and helping them to address the water issues that they have and an understanding of how much water they have and how much water is moving through a system. You know, so for me, my degree is in civil engineering, civil and environmental engineering, and I also have a love of history, and especially Western history. So I think the state engineer's job fits my interests very well and my personality very well. I did my best got my best grades, I guess, in school in physics and the physical sciences, but I love studying history, and that's what water law and water rights bring together, is that technical aspect, but also that Western history and Utah history as well. So, but our day here is really moving that water where it needs to go.
Awesome. And very cool about marrying those two loves together.
Yeah.
Kind of tying into that is, for those who don't know, is what is a water right and how does a water right work?
Good question. So a water right, like I've mentioned just previously, very briefly, since 1903, any diversion of surface water, and then 1935, any diversion of groundwater for any beneficial use, whether it's agriculture, whether it's drinking, whether it's use in your home, industrial, any beneficial use, you need to have a water right, and you would apply through the state engineer's office to acquire that water right. The water right then gets a priority date, which is first in time, first in right. And then it has defined beneficial uses. So the water right essentially gives someone, it's not like you own a water right, you have a right to use, because the water is considered the benefit of the public, or owned by the public, and then you apply for a right to use that portion of the water. And then it's my job and my agency's job to manage those hundreds to over 200,000 water rights across the state and make sure that they're distributed appropriately and used appropriately. So if you turn on your tap, there's a water right somewhere in there.
Are all of the water rights already allocated? Is like all the water you like assigned out?
Yeah, so most of the basins are closed to any new appropriations across the state. There are some basins that are open to small appropriations, like for individual homes on a well, but very, very limited supplies that can still be appropriated.
So how does that work with growing population? Like more people coming in, how do they have access to water? Or is that just like umbrellas?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So most of the new development, or cities, as they acquire existing water rights, so they would acquire existing water right and then file a change application on that water right to change the nature of use and potentially the place of use. So we have the whole system of water rights, and you can purchase those or buy those and then alter them through a change application process for your needs. And that's what happens quite often. We deal with many of those change applications, hundreds of those change applications a year.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And piggybacking off of that question also is another one person asked was, with our growing population of influx of people coming to live in Utah, is all of the water, is there enough water for everyone? Have we used it all up?
Yeah, so I would say that most of the water is being used within the state for a beneficial use. Like I mentioned, you can acquire an existing use, you retire a prior use to start a new use. So I think that as we develop as a state, I think we do need to be aware of, the existing resource, what is available, how much is available, and then make sure that how we're growing allows within those limits, right? Or is allowed within those limits. And so I think we just need to make good policy decisions and good decisions as users of water, that we're being conscientious and good stewards of that resource that we do have.
Yes, it's all part of an interconnected web, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right, we have one final question from our community, and that is regarding data collection and something kind of with the recent legislative session of like, oh, is there enough data on water? And Do we have enough data? And how, as we get more data, how will that help with the future planning so that everyone does have enough water?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. We have a lot of data now. And as I mentioned in that, the slides that I showed, what we're finding that we need is not necessarily a measurement that we have to go on site to get that measurement. But with this telemeter data, it helps us collect more data more frequently so that we can make those decisions, those real-time decisions quicker and more accurately to make sure that we're managing that water correctly. I know the legislature just did a large investment those last couple of years in allowing us to be able to purchase additional measurement devices and get those installed. So we are doing a gap analysis in the Great Salt Lake Basin right now that we're finishing up this year, and then we'll identify where we do need additional measurement, and then we'll work to get those measurement devices installed and start collecting that data. But we're constantly making sure that we're acquiring the data and measuring what we need to measure as things change.
It's so good to hear. Well, before I say thank you, do you have any last thoughts or any final thoughts that you want to say or share with everyone before we conclude our conversation today?
Yeah, maybe I would just, offer that if anyone does have additional questions or interest in finding out what the state engineer does, more in depth, or what we do, or questions on how we measure, happy to address those. And anyone just can feel free to reach out and ask those questions. We're happy to address them. I can, or any of the staff here at the Division of Water Rights. We love to talk about what we do. So.
Thank you. Thank you for being so willing to engage with our community and public. And thank you for all this information. It was really valuable.
Oh, good. I'm glad you found it valuable. So.
Well, thank you for being on here today, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope everyone else has a really great day as well, and we will see you guys next time.